Sup, everybody? This is Karak with ACG, and welcome to another episode of Better with VR, where I take a look at a game using various software injectors, using the Vive or the Oculus Rift, and we see how an older game looks. Because, frankly, for many of us with these headsets, there aren't any good, great, long-term AAA games, and some of these injectors that inject fake 3D do a pretty good job. So I'm using Vorpix. Once again, this is in no way, shape, or form me trying to say you should go out and buy the software. In fact, it's actually not the easiest to use, and it's certainly not perfect, but when you have a headset like this and you've spent $800 or $600, sometimes you want to jump in there and just see what you can do with those older titles. So looking at this game, Alan Wake, there's a couple different settings that we can do, and one of the things I have to say is it's really starting to develop a pattern where we find virtual cinema is the best way to go. Currently, you'll see that I'm not in virtual cinema, which is where the head tilt comes into play. I'm actually using the internal full 3D view as well as the look motion that locked into the camera. So when I move my head around, the actual flashlight moves and Alan Wake moves. Now I have to say this is absolutely impressive when it comes to immersion. The problem with any of these kind of games, as you guys saw my walking the walk, is that this game really jumps between combat and interspersed cinematic gameplay as well as 3D gameplay or third-person player gameplay quite often, and that can be a little bit difficult. Now here you can see me fighting a little bit with the camera, my head view, and the actual cursor itself, and that's why I'm having issues fighting. As well as what you guys are seeing is slightly different than what I am. I'm seeing a little bit of a truncated view here because of the way the headset curves. So you guys can see things just a little bit clearer, of course, than I can. I will say this, it doesn't take incredibly long to get accustomed to it. Now, I haven't played Alan Wake in a long time, so I forgot what all the buttons did. But you can see that over time I'm starting to be able to aim and sort of figure out exactly where my shots are going. It just takes a tiny bit of practice. It is funny, you know, we as humans, we're able to adjust the way we interact with the world so quickly. And I found that I was able to switch over to a headset tracking aiming view mixed with the actual movement of the thumbstick and do a fairly good job. See, that's me moving my head. It really does add an incredible layer of immersion. And in many ways, it's sort of like any kind of shooting game, any kind of game that you play where if you're playing it non-3D, you might be looking at the entire screen. Your focal point is at one specific area, and then you'll look around that screen. Well, you're doing the same here, except you get to see that a little bit. You can also adjust the speed at which that moves, and another couple factors within it. It is a bit difficult, I've found, especially when you see stuff like this, for me to understand where the enemy is behind me, because again, we've got a bit of a truncated view, and I'll show you a better view here in a second, but I wanted to let you guys see how combat sort of played out in this. Now, when it comes to immersion, immersion's huge for me. Does this add to immersion? It absolutely does. However, it's got one caveat that is quite large for me, and that's the grass. You can see the grass textures. It definitely has an issue where it can't figure out that separation. Now, I don't know if that's some kind of alpha blending, something to do with transparencies. I'm not quite sure what's causing that, but it does look bad. So what I've done here is jumped to an inner location, something pretty tight, so we can see how this all works. And the effect of 3D here is quite well done. You're not using the geometry 3D, which I explained before, which is a mathematical calculation, using Z-buffer or Z-buffer alternative, which takes information from the Z-buffer and identifies a 3D picture from it, creates a stereo 3D picture from it. I'll say this. It looks really good and it works well. You'll see I'm in a slightly different style of view here as I'm sort of going through and adjusting. Again, you see the ambience on the left and right where the light bleed is coming from the screen and bleeding out to the left and right, which really does just an incredible amount to alleviate any kind of motion sickness. Here's the problem. This looks insane. I have to say the sense of immersion here, it's completely playable in certain specific ways. But once again, other than the grass thing, you do have a couple little issues. So the cutscenes are done out of engine, which is great. You don't have to worry about any kind of 3D. But the game does have a tendency to go between long distance locations, big open locations, and a lot of cramped locations. For example, I've jumped here to one of the locations that's actually quite large. You're able to run down this long road as you're going to the coal mine. And you're going to see me adjusting some different settings to sort of try to get this right, because one of the issues that you run into when you're using this software injector is that your stereo separation, there's a setting in there that you can adjust the strength to be near or far for what you're seeing. And because of the way the game works and you're inside close up, you're then far away, I've found that it's actually almost impossible to get that dialed in right. So what I did was there's a setting called 3D strength. By dialing that down, you do dial down a tiny bit of the 3D feeling. Not a ton of it. I mean, you still definitely are in a 3D world. You're definitely seeing the full 3D pictures you can see here. I wanted to show you guys that I'm actually playing it in 3D. That's another reason why the picture is a little lower resolution here, because I'm recording the mirror. But what it allows you to do when you dial down that separation or that strength just a little bit is that it makes items up close more in focus and farther away more in focus as well, depending on what you're looking at within the screen. And that actually helps a lot. In fact, a couple people had tried Life is Strange and they were having some difficulties there. And I found out that by using the Z buffer alternative or Z buffer normal and adjusting that setting, I was able to get what I think is a perfectly working non-cross-eyed feel to the 3D. And that's what I'm trying to mess around with here, just adjusting that zoom in and out and looking at how far away something needs to be to sort of understand that it's in a 3D world, but you don't see those borders when you're inside of your Rift or inside of your HTC. I think that's one of the first things you need to understand when you're playing a game that is not necessarily built for 3D, is that you're not going to see that square border, the right, left, upper, and lower borders like a TV screen. And I think that a lot of people get a little confused by that. But for the most part, most HUDs don't use those border areas anyway. They do for the mini-map, which many of them allow you to adjust the horizontal and vertical now of a mini-map. And you can see me here sort of going into the different views and trying to get it all aligned. Now, when it comes to how it runs, it actually runs fairly well because you are using the Z buffer alternative and Z buffer normal, which is far less computer intensive than if you were running the geometry setting. Sorry, as I look around here trying to get this mouse look view sort of under control. Does it work? Yeah, the immersion settings, the way to get this thing dialed in, it doesn't take super long to get it dialed in. Does it work as well as Life is Strange? No, I don't think it does. Life is Strange has a certain cinematic flair to it, has a certain cinematic look and style to it, and does not jump into the action-packed sort of extraordinaire moments that Alan Wake likes to do at particular times. Alan Wake is beautiful. When you're in 3D or when you're looking at it normal, it's beautiful. And I'm going to jump here in a bit towards the lodge so you can see it. It is a little bit more subdued here because you are impacted by the grass looking messed up when you're in that 3D view. And unfortunately, a lot of the game has that grass. And that could be a killer for some people. It could be a setting, by the way, in NVIDIA that I can't seem to figure out. I've tried to mess around with the setting multiple times to try to get that to go away. It could be one of those situations where it's very easy and I've just missed it somehow. But in the end, I quickly ignored that and was able to move on and play the game and jump around to both the expansions as well as the normal game and just play and really enjoy myself. Now I'm going to take you for a little virtual jog here. This is having the headset and mouse look on. So basically you're using the headset to look, but it's also intermixed with the gamepad's right thumbstick. And I have to say, you would think this would be difficult, but as I said a little bit before, you are able to dial in quite quickly how to move with those two things sort of merged together. In many ways, it's sort of like a person just running down the street anyway or going for a jog and looking left and right. You just sort of have to get used to it and get accustomed to that double movement. And within a very short amount of time, I was able to. Unfortunately, not everything is perfect in the land of Alan Wake and Evil Riders. Oh boy, driving. I would say it took less than 17 seconds before I became violently ill. Now, one of the reasons why is because when you're in the head look motion and the game's got Bob on anyway, so that means when you're going over bumps and stuff like that, there I am right there. You can already tell. That's how long it took me to instantly feel like I was going to get VR sickness. That's how long. It took almost nothing, and that's because it's a mix of that head tracking being on as well as the head bob that's within the normal game. And it would be almost, the only way to describe it would be to be in a vehicle that was, four-buying, and not only is it going up and down and bumping like a normal person would, but then you're leaping up and down at the same time while trying to concentrate on what's going on and trying to sort of guess. And I had to switch out of the head bob or out of the head look, and here you can see it's totally fine. I am understanding how to drive again. I forgot that Alan Wake's driving of vehicles isn't the best, but I got used to it quite quickly, and the VR sickness went away in about 2 to 3 minutes because I caught it quick. I think it's really important that people understand that as we move forward with this series, if you are susceptible to VR sickness, Dramamine and multiple different anti-illness medications will work. Take them 20 to 30 minutes before a game. And that will, for most people, I won't say for everybody, really does work very, very well to make sure that you don't get that intense motion sickness. Some people try chewing gum or chewing ginger. Those remedies work for lesser or more degrees and work on various other systems that aren't actually connected directly to the science of anti sickness medications. So you can try those at your own peril, I guess, because I'm going to tell you, VR sickness easily can last 8 hours for some people. So I'm driving up here to this vista. I want to show you 2 other places and really talk just for immersion. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you guys a rating, and then anybody who doesn't want to watch the rest of this can jump off. I would say if you said, should I go buy Alan Wake just to play it in VR, I would say probably not, unless you could get it for under maybe get it for $10 or $5. It's playable completely. You put it into virtual cinema mode, you crank up or down that 3D separation until you get a good feeling, and you're set. You're good to go. It is completely playable, but you have a couple graphics issues. Okay, so that's the rating. Yes, completely playable. Don't rush out to buy the game. But if you have the ability to play it, I suggest you try it out, because it really is incredibly immersive and very, very enjoyable. So that's the rating for that. Let's move forward. So I just wanted to show you guys this. It reminded me of Firewatch, so I figured I'd walk up here. And I have to say, one of the things that we notice using 3D, using Oculus, using all these different things, is the interlacing of architecture. Architecture on a 2D screen, you don't realize how flat it is because they fake ambient occlusion, fake shadowing. You have all of these different things to fake a 3D effect. But really, it's not 3D. It's not. And you can be tricked by being able to walk within the location in 3D. But the game is actually not really displaying in 3D until you get a 3D headset, or you get an Oculus Rift, or you get a Vive. And when you put it on and you look at architecture in 3D, and you look at the multifaceted with all the angles, and you can see the difference in real space, it is almost shocking just how much more immersion there is there. And I always felt that Alan Wake had such a great amount of atmosphere, but its immersion is nailed when you do this. And so what I'm going to do, I noticed it here, but I wanted to show you guys the lodge. So this is the last thing I wanted to show you guys. It's just incredible once you really start to understand and see this 3D right here. I can't describe to you guys easily what it's like, except it really does feel like a looking glass moment when you come outside and you start looking around and you see the just multiple infinite layers of 3D that's going on here. And I stop up here to look out at the lake, because it's the first time, and I've played Alan Wake multiple times, including just recently for the Walking the Walk. And when you come down and you sort of look out and you see this right here, I had to stop. This is breathtaking. It's breathtaking. Like, that's the only way to describe it. Because Alan Wake already had the excellent color schemes and usage of art anyway. But when you are seeing this in 3D, I just don't even know how to easily describe it. That completely floored me. It stopped me in my tracks when I was recording this. And I was just looking at that going like, holy shit, that is amazing looking. Or these little notches in the stone all actually having depth, where I've played this game multiple times and didn't really think of that as, I thought of it as a 3D construct, but when you see it. And I'm going to go out here and I'm going to look up at the cabin, and the multifaceted layering of the cabin and all of the different depths, from the window shutters to the different flooring. It is one of those moments where you really see that these older games, once we get some fixes for them and stuff like that, can be truly immersive, can be truly amazing looking. And it's actually quite shocking just how in-depth something can look and how much it can feel like you're within that game. So here we go. Yeah, I was stunned when I saw that lake, but then I was like, oh, I'll look around here and I'll look at the cabin, and I just floored. Yeah, it's impossible to describe until you see it in 3D, but it's, all of the lattice work and everything feeling like it's separated. And the windows, it's crazy to realize that the window framing that holds each individual window has depth to them now when you can see them. And that's, in many ways, I think a lot of these games will become sort of like a virtual tour for me, where maybe if it doesn't play that well, at least I'll do it just to look around. So anyway, that's it for me. I hope you guys like this video. As I said a couple minutes ago, this is certainly worth checking out if you have a Vive or an Oculus and you have Vorpix, and you can do that. It's certainly not the best overall implementation, but it's completely playable, and it feels pretty good during it. And I would certainly say that it has some caveats, one being the grass and two being the driving, which neither one really impacts you that much. The grass you see a lot of times, the driving doesn't happen that often. So I hope you guys liked the video. If you do, give it a thumbs up. Maybe check out the Patreon, help us out there. Maybe check out Reddit, what have you. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. And as always, peace out.